We have two speakers for your information. Both Brad and James are going to talk to us about the Free Software Mirror Group in New Zealand.
Cool, all right. So I'm Brad. I work for the University of Waikato in New Zealand for the One Network group. And this is James.
I'm James. I work for Catalyst IT in Wellington as a Linux sysadmin.
And sadly, Michael couldn't make it to LCA today, but he's the other member of our team. And, oh, that's not gonna work. No. Okay. So a little bit of a history lesson to start off with in New Zealand. So back in 2016, all of our sort of app mirrors and RPM mirrors, that kind of thing, it was all sort of one service, and that company that was providing that was fantastic for the community and that kind of thing. But it did mean that when their service wasn't running, that people couldn't get app updates in New Zealand, so that was a little bit annoying. So what kind of happened is Michael, during a particular outage, sent a knee-jerk email to the New Zealand Network Operators Group and said, hey, who wants to help me start some mirrors? And he got a little bit of interest. Apparently this was a sore point that a lot of other people have been thinking about. And so the hard part is how do you actually turn all that offers of hardware and help and hosting, how do you actually convert that to some kind of action? So that was the big sort of first step for our project. So the key steps we kind of did that helped us early on is we formed a small, tight team that worked really well together and had the same sort of goals, and we went off trying to build something. And this whole process of building the first version of FSMG took about a year, so it wasn't a fast process because we all got regular day jobs. This was a side project. But the big thing that sort of helped out was all our sponsors who came on early, and we picked out a couple that we really wanted to work with. So Insomnia Security, their particular interest was that Kali Linux wasn't being mirrored in New Zealand or anywhere really in the Southern Hemisphere. So they gave us hard drives in exchange for us hosting a Cowie mirror for them in New Zealand. REANs were fantastic. So REANs, for those who don't know, is the National Education Network in New Zealand for all the universities and CRIs. And they basically said, whatever you need, we'll be there to help. So they're doing all of our rack space, power. They provide us free bandwidth, international and national, unlimited, and that's been really great. Another great thing about REANs is they're a non-commercial provider, so they don't have incentives to limit us. They, in fact, want us to provide bits, Linux bits, to as many people as possible. So that's been quite nice. And they're also giving us free IPs, which is quite cool. Catalyst have given us our initial hardware, so all of our machines are X machines from Catalyst. And a particular shout out to our friend Wolfie, whose father happened to be in Wellington, and he put a machine in the back of his car, drove it to the city I live in, which is where our redundant site is, and that was great for a time where we didn't have enough money to pay for shipping ourselves. So at the moment, the servers are sort of out of support, they're recycled, but there's a slide later on talking about how we want to fix that. So our goals were pretty simple. So we wanted to supply a service that was just doing mirroring, so we don't have anything that distracts us from that goal, so we don't have a business on the side. It's purely existing to host Linux ISOs. Because we're a small volunteer team, we needed everything to be redundant and resilient, so if something fails, we don't stress out about having to fly somewhere or drive somewhere to swap out drives or machines or that kind of thing. We have a few days to fix things when things go wrong, and no one here will notice because it's all redundant. So we also wanted to make sure we were mirroring things that weren't already in New Zealand, as well as also helping out people who were already mirroring in New Zealand by becoming the country code mirrors for New Zealand for a bunch of stuff. We also wanted to be kind of modern, so we do V6 and HTTPS. And yeah, the main goal is to make everyone's apt-get updates quicker, and we get pretty good feedback on Twitter, so we must be doing something at least semi-reasonable. All right, so what exactly did we build? So we've got two sites, two separate data centers. This is the REAN's network map, and they've got a backbone of 100 gigabit right throughout New Zealand. and there are all the major internet peering points, and they have a very open and permissive peering policy. So if anyone wants better Linux ISOs, go to PeeringDB and go peer with them somewhere. We're doing high availability with Anycast. So apps and sort of any Linux mirrors, there's not much state there. So what happens is each node advertises the same IP in BGP, and then that's what we publish in DNS. So you'll get routed depending on where you're closest to one of our nodes, either in Hamilton or Wellington. And each node knows how to check itself that it's serving content, and it pulls its BGP advertisement when something goes wrong, and that means you'll always hit another node. And so here's a little bit of insight into how many people use our mirrors. Yes, 0 failed requests. That's what every sysadmin likes to see. And we like to be quite conscious of privacy, so we only keep 14 days worth of logs. So I can only give you the last 14, well, when I generated this the other day, 14 days worth of logs. And a lot of those requests are the internal health check. So real requests that we serve to clients, 3.5 million in 2 weeks, which is about 7 terabytes in 2 weeks. We serve a lot of files. Processing that log took a little while. It's a gig just in logs. And 78,000 unique IPs, which is quite cool. These are the areas we're servicing at the moment. So originally, the plan was, improve New Zealand's mirroring. But while they do the most number of files, Australia by far outweighs everyone in size. So we do in 2 weeks, 3.2 terabytes to Australia. And most of that seems to be the Cowie ISO, and we're not quite sure why everyone needs to download that so much. But honestly, if we wanted to serve about 95% of our requests, we would serve that one file, and everything would be still show up in the stats in the same way. And I think the reason why we serve so much Cowie is we're effectively the only mirrors in the Southern Hemisphere. There's a couple in China and in Europe, but they're contained in their regions. They don't get advertised outside of that. And so this is a sysadmin mini-conf. We thought we'd talk a little bit about challenges that we came to. And so we actually use Apache for everything. We thought it would be cool and we'd use npm event, which is the Nginx type thing in Apache. And we thought, hey, that will probably work, right? We were using Debian Apache, which was a little bit older, and it had this fun bug with SSL that would just mean the Apache threads would just all lock up at the same time, which was quite annoying. But luckily, with the BGP tool that Michael wrote, whenever a node locked up and stopped serving, it gets pulled from BGP and everyone automatically gets redirected. So all we get is a huge bunch of alarms on our phones, but actually users weren't impacted. So then we're like, oh, let's just go back to npm worker. I'm sure that'll work. And then we just, we're serving a lot of files. So by this point, we're the official mirrors for Cowie and Debian and a bunch of stuff. And we were doing a lot. So we kind of liked the 90s. We thought they were cool. And it turns out they knew how to write web servers back then. So we're now using Prefork, which is pretty much the original worker thread model from, 1999. And we haven't had really a single issue since dealing with load. And some achievements to date. So we helped 2 degrees notice a problem on their, so they're a large New Zealand ISP for those that don't know. We helped them notice a problem with some of their code rollout to some of their Juniper PE nodes. And it took them a little while to track it down, but with the help of FSMGs, they could grab ISOs from us in different parts of the country. They use that to track down their V6 problem, and now you can get really fast V6 through them, which is great. And then I think you want to go over this?
Sure. So we have also fully automated the mirror setup with Ansible and our maintenance stuff with that, which we're hoping to release this year, but I don't think we've actually put it up yet. And we've also released our ExaBGP health check stuff, which is available on GitLab at that URL, which is MIT licensed, so feel free to use it as you desire. How to use our mirrors? Everything is just mirror.fsmg.org.nz. There's HTTP, HTTPS, and rsync available for everything that we do. We're official mirrors for Debian, Raspbian, Ubuntu, CentOS, Arch Linux, Cowie, and OpenBSD. So you're probably already using our mirrors if you use one of those without realizing it. Where to now? So our main goal for 2019 is to get some newer server hardware, ideally something that we can fit more than 4 hard drives into. And we would like to open source the rest of our infrastructure Ansible and allow other mirrors to modernize themselves a little bit and keep up to date with what we're trying to do and set standards with. So if you want to join us, if you're not already using our mirrors, please help us. If you know someone that's willing to sponsor, say, new hardware, new hard drives, bigger hard drives, some SSDs for caching, you know, anything like this, please feel free to get in touch. If you would like us to mirror something that we're not already mirroring, there's already a few things that we aren't officially mirroring that aren't on these slides that you can go and have a look at on the website, but let us know. There's a GitHub issue tracker that's full of people's requests, so feel free to add yours there. And please feel free to join us in the #FSMG channel on Freenode. And thanks again to our sponsors. So Rians, who give us the rack space and connectivity in the 2 data centers, as well as all our IP space. Insomnia provided us with all the hard drives. Catalyst provided us with the servers that we're now trying to replace into our DNS hosting. ZX Security gave us some more hardware. Metaname gave us domain registrations. Wand gave us general support. And Advantage provided us with some more RAM so that we could speed up requests that we're serving. But yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
First of all, thanks for the service, guys. I'm already using it. The question is, I noticed that there's people sponsoring, but what if you want to help out on an individual's basis? Say if I wanted to give you $100 or something like that, is there a way I can do so?
We haven't really thought about that, but if you pop into the RSC and have a chat to us, we've already personally put in money, so we upgraded all of our recycled hardware using our favorite website, eBay. Turns out if you buy Xeons from a few generations ago, you can get some pretty decent stuff. So that's what we're running at the moment. But yeah, pop in and have a chat. We'd love to work something out.
Boring why not X question, but why not Nginx? Why go straight to Apache for the main mirror?
Yeah, good question. You could say we're really stubborn, would be maybe the first answer. But it kind of makes things a bit easier for us using Apache. So the mirroring community is really strange in a lot of ways and old school. And you actually, when you mirror someone, you rsync often in an HDXS file that applies their theme. And that's kind of the only main reason. But yeah, we thought we'd give ourselves a challenge and see if we can make it work with Apache, because you should be able to, and we kind of have for our current load level. So yeah, bit of a non-answer, but that's the answer.
And to add an answer to that, licensing. Because up until very recently, you couldn't even monitor Nginx through without the proprietary version. Anyway, question about the Apache worker setup. You said you just ran into the limits. Did you do any more than that? Was there a reason why you ended up having to go back to event? Because normally you can up those limits quite a great deal, and it's usually enough to handle everything.
We went through a period of a month where every time we had an outage, which in its worst got to every day, we went and upped all those limits, and we'd always hit something strange. And because we're doing our day job and then also trying to fix FSMG, we didn't always have the best time to debug it. So occasionally I'd run a strace, and that was about as deep as we got. And eventually we just gave up and went full nuclear, went to pre-fork. We have enough memory. Pre-fork is only limited by how much memory you have, and it turns out it's quite a small number. Also, you don't have too many clients sitting around and keep alive or trying to do pipelining, so it's an okay. It's applicable for our workload.
Okay, one more question.
Off the back again. UC Mirror, we haven't talked to them. We have talked to other mirrors in New Zealand. In particular, So CityLink, who have been running services in New Zealand forever for Linux mirroring, and they welcome that there's someone there separate now, because they used to, every time their Linux mirror is down, so they do ftp.nz.debian and the Ubuntu, they would get calls to their ISP help desk from randoms that are not their customers, being like, when are you fixing your Linux mirrors? And so they enjoy that they get less phone calls now. But no, we don't know who runs UC Mirror. If you know who, please introduce us, and we'd love to have a chat.
Okay, thank you very much.